Welcome back to the second part of Which Hunter You Should Pick, featuring Rolend from B4U, who has come back again to do a second part with me. Without further ado, let's begin. Che Bian and Fan Wujiao were best friends, almost like brothers. But after getting into a fight with the governor's son, the governor decided to punish whoever started the fight. The two friends both tried to take the blame, but the governor only wanted one person to take the blame. The friends decided to meet each other on the Nantai Bridge to discuss what their plan of action would be, but after seeing that it was about to rain, Wu Jiao decided to go and fetch his umbrella, asking Bian to remain under the bridge. Bian noticed the water was rising, and presumably to save his friend from punishment, he decided to not move from under the bridge. Wu Jiao returned to find that Bian was nowhere to be seen, and presumably drowned under the bridge. Wu Jiao decided to carry the black umbrella he was fetching that day every day, sun or rain, each day becoming more and more violent and angry until he died saddened by the loss of his friend. Wu Chang's abilities are dependent on which form he is in. White Guard has slow map interaction, for example breaking pallets and vaulting windows, along with a slower but a very long attack range animation. Meanwhile, Black Guard has a slower movement speed, but a fast pallet breaking and window vaulting animation. His abilities revolve around swapping between these two forms by throwing his umbrella and teleporting to its location. After doing so, Wu Chang will change to the opposite form to the one he was at before the umbrella teleportation. Both the Black Guard and the White Guard have their own unique abilities. Black Guard can use a bell to fire a shockwave in front of him in a narrow column in front of him. Any survivors caught within the shockwave will get a brief stun and will now need to complete a calibration. If they miss the calibration twice after being hit by the bell in brief succession, their controls will be reversed for some time. White Guard, on the other hand, can use a Soul Siphon ability that drastically increases his movement speed, but stops him from using an attack until the ability has finished. Whilst using his ability, any survivor that he is next to and he is aiming at will slowly get their soul siphoned. Once completely siphoned, the survivor won't be able to interact with pallets or windows until they have recovered. Once at full presence, Wu Chang's teleportation will also gain a special effect. Upon using his umbrella to teleport to a location, around the radius of the umbrella, the guard's abilities will blast out. Survivors in close proximity to the umbrella will either be bell stunned or have their soul siphoned. The strategy for Wu Chang consists of using his varying abilities to quickly down survivors, using the bell to quickly stun and hit the survivor, or the soul siphon to catch up to a survivor and stop them from vaulting and escaping your attacks. In the early game, his umbrella teleport is key and permits him to quickly appear next to a survivor, drastically shortening the chase. His umbrella becomes his strongest tool since it is his form of map control. Appearing next to decoding survivors, he can quickly eliminate key survivors by masterfully swapping between each form to fit the scenario. A good Wu Chang will use his umbrella to force survivors into moving into a certain direction, or to force a survivor into making a certain decision. His chair camping is also strong, since he can quickly harass and even inhibit survivors from rescuing using the bell or the soul siphon, giving enough time for the survivor to be eliminated, or for the rescuer to be knocked down also. Interesting fact. After getting reverse controls and soul siphoned in quick succession, survivors will gain an extra debuff consisting of a massive movement speed decrease for a short period of time. Some would consider this to be a hidden ability for Wu Chang.
Photographer, also known as Joseph, was an artist originally from France but later moved to England. After losing his twin brother, Photographer became obsessed with parapsychology and wanted to store live images of people in the photos he took. Over time, people began to realize that those who had their photos taken by the photographer had gone missing. The people then rallied up and busted into Photographer's home, but he was also nowhere to be found. It was almost as if he and his victims had gone over to another dimension. Photographer has the extraordinary ability to take a snapshot of the current world. This photo forms the camera world, which has a duplicate copy of all survivors and other gameplay elements. This camera world is temporary, but when it ends, half of the changes made in it are immediately applied. This means that a survivor that decoded half a cipher during the camera world will see it revert back to about a fourth. Photographer can also hit the static mirror images of survivors. When the camera world ends, half of the damage he applied to the mirrored survivors will be forced on the respective real survivors. If he puts a mirror image into a rocket chair, the survivors will be incapacitated upon the end of the camera world. After taking the snapshot using any of the cameras lying around the map, photographer and survivors can traverse between the real world and the camera world by stepping into a portal next to any of the cameras. Additionally, photographer has a unique basic attack that deals 1.5 times a normal basic attack of other hunters. Survivors that are hit once, then healed, will have health equal to 0.5 times a normal basic attack. This means that they will still be incapacitated by one more 1.5 times hit. At first presence, photographer can freely swap between the real world and the camera world. After receiving full presence, photographer can use time jump, which lets him rewind to one of his previous positions in the last 15 seconds. Photographer excels at slowing down the game. Although his chase potential is relatively weak, he can knock down and share the mirror images of survivors in the camera world, and then go search for the incapacitated bodies in the real world. His extra damage passive makes it very difficult for survivors to rescue multiple times or get healed to a useful state. Once he has presence, photographer can use his two abilities to stay hidden from the survivors and even jump out to surprise them when they are decoding or relocating. Fun fact, photographer's camera world nullifies many of the survivors' abilities if they enter the mirrored world. This includes Seer's Owl, Entomologist Bees, Mechanic's Doll, etc.
Mad Eyes, also known as Broke Lapadura, worked as an engineer and construction worker who as a child had a passion for building machines and gadgets. Later in life, he was hired to work at the Elitas Manor and worked on expanding the manor, organizing the workers, and improving on the manor's architecture. Whilst working at the manor, he worked on his own side project of making a robot to protect the manor's grounds. But soon his employers had children, and these children messed with Mad Eye's work, eventually causing the robot to become self-aware by playing with it and naming it Bonbon. Presumably during this time, Mad Eyes developed some affection towards the children. As one night the manor was attacked and the family was taken, Mad Eyes felt like he was to blame since his robot should have been a ruthless armed machine. So to prevent further future attacks, Mad Eyes equipped his robot with weapons in the hope that his employers would return one day so he could keep them safe. Mad Eyes' abilities are based on consoles that spawn at the beginning of a match. After interacting with one of these consoles, Mad Eyes can see the whole map from an aerial view and decide to watch any other console from above. By doing this, he can see the console's surrounding area and he can pan the camera around to find survivors. While seeing the map from above, Mad Eyes can draw lines on the ground, consuming some of that console's energy. Out of those lines, walls will appear, and if a survivor is hit by these walls, they will take 0.5 of a normal hit. These walls can be vaulted by both the survivor and by Mad Eyes, but survivors will take damage upon vaulting. After receiving first presence, Mad Eyes can use his ARM console to enter console view mode. This will consume more energy than using a console, but gives him the ability to enter console view from anywhere on the map. At full presence, he can overclock a console, reducing the amount of energy that console will use. But after overclocking that console, it will replenish its energy much slower for a brief period of time. The strategy for Mad Eyes consists of using his walls to chip away health of survivors all over the map by quickly swapping between different consoles and locating survivors, hitting them with walls and interrupting their decoding. He can also hit decoding survivors and even block off different kiting routes. A good Mad Eyes will quickly hit survivors with walls, cutting off routes and predicting survivors' movements, locking survivors into certain areas and making it easier to knock them down and chair them. By doing this, a Mad Eyes can slow down a match's progress and harass survivors wherever he may be. Interesting fact, walls will disappear when near a cipher machine, chair or exit gate, so blocking off cipher machines will only work for a few seconds. Placing walls on the bridges of Moonlit River Park will also have the same effect.
Dream Witch, also known as Yidra, is an ancient being that existed before even the first microorganism. This legendary figure has the ability to acquire characteristics by devouring things around her. In addition, Dream Witch can divide her body into multiple parts, each containing a small portion of her total consciousness. These parts, called followers, are also immortal. Dream Witch herself is so powerful that her main form is invisible to all but her followers. Dream Witch's main body is actually hidden from the survivors, and she cannot directly interact with them. Instead, she summons followers to chase down and chair the survivors for her. She begins with only one follower that can never stray too far away from Dream Witch's main body. However, throughout the game, she can acquire more followers by marking a survivor so they become the host of a brand new follower. At any point, Dream Witch can switch between controlling her main body and any one of her followers. This gives her the powerful but tricky ability of being at several different locations of the map at the same time. When she summons a follower, it leaves behind a witch mark. Survivors can pick it up and gain the ability to slowly remove a survivor's follower. When a follower gets too far from its host, it will forcibly track and chase the host. If the follower then hits the host, it will deal the damage but be immediately removed. At first presence, her leech ability, which summons a follower, has a much lower cooldown. After receiving full presence, all of Dream Witch's followers now have a longer range under which they can be controlled. Dream Witch has extremely high map control. She can strategically place her followers around the map to disrupt decoding or healing. By using the auto-chasing mechanic of her followers, she can essentially be hunting multiple survivors at the same time. Finally, each follower has a separate cooldown for the active trait, meaning that she can use teleport, or blink, or any other trait multiple times in a short time frame. Fun fact, Dream Witch's main body cannot block the movement of survivors. However, she can vault windows, and if she is carrying the confined space trait, the window will be blocked, meaning that survivors cannot vault it even though they cannot see her.
Axe-Boy, also known as Robbie White, was a young boy who, after losing his parents, was sent to the White Sand Street orphanage with his sister Dolores. After working hard in the orphanage, he would always spend his time with his sister. This all changed though when the orphanage was changed into an asylum, and the children were used to be experimented on. Axe-Boy and his sister were separated. Axe-Boy would visit her by sneaking to her room every night, where she would tell him stories of the juniper tree. One night, Robbie tried to visit his sister, but was decapitated by a heavy window, waking up later to find himself under a juniper tree, without his sister. Axe-Boy's abilities revolve around the trees that spawn around the map at the beginning of a match. These trees create fire souls that will circle each tree. Upon entering a tree's radius, a survivor will also gain a fire soul that will circle around them. Axe-Boy can attract one of these fire souls towards himself, giving him a short speed boost for a brief period of time. If a fire soul hits a survivor upon attracting the soul towards himself, instead it will damage the survivor for 1 hit's worth of damage. Upon gaining some presence, Axe-Boy can place a road of roots in a specified direction. Upon walking on these routes, his movement speed will be increased drastically as he surfs along the routes. Axe-Boy can also place more trees around the map, giving him more fire souls. At full presence, survivors leaving the radius of a tree will be slowed considerably for a few seconds. The strategy for Axe-Boy consists of using the fireballs to hit survivors at a distance, and to force them into kiting into a certain direction, placing trees in key locations to maximize the number of souls in the area, and to create more route paths between trees to increase Axe-Boy's speed around the map. Axe-Boy excels in speed, as he can use the fireballs to quickly catch up to a survivor, or use his roots to move around the map with ease. Once at full presence, the tree will also slow down survivors' movements around the map, giving him some slight map control. His chair camping is also quite strong, due to his ability to hit incoming survivors with a fireball, or to use his roots to hit them and then quickly return to the chair to hit them once again. Interesting fact, after placing 2 trees close to each other, a path of roots will appear between them, which Axe-Boy can use to glide across in the same fashion as his Restful Roads ability.
Evil Reptilian, also known as Lucino, was once a researcher studying reptiles and amphibians. He would do experiments with their venoms on various subjects like rats, or even himself. After getting a rare snake from a colleague, he vanished, leaving only some scales behind in his room. But these scales were too big to come from any existing reptile. According to his notes, Evil Reptilian is not bothered by his new form. Rather, he sees it as another step in human evolution. Every second, Evil Reptilian slowly accumulates energy. He can then use some to launch himself in the air and close any distances between himself and survivors. At any point while in the air, he can choose to make a second jump to extend the distance covered, or descend rapidly to shorten the distance. After receiving first presence, he unlocks another option, to crash straight down, which also descends rapidly, but actually deals a normal attack damage to a survivor in the crash range. Additionally, any drop pallet in the crash range is broken. After he reaches full presence, Evil Reptilian's dropping speed increases, and he can jump a third time while in the air. Evil Reptilian can rapidly cover ground in open areas. This makes it difficult for survivors to transition to a new area against him. Evil Reptilian can also use his crash and follow up with his basic attack to double hit survivors attempting to perform a rescue. Depending on the map, Evil Reptilian can surprise survivors by taking shortcuts to higher ground or by jumping over short obstacles. An experienced Evil Reptilian will be able to turn his perspective mid-air in order to land precisely on the survivors. Fun fact, Evil Reptilian's jump can be used in a way to make it look like he is hopping repeatedly off the ground. This technique is called bunny hop, and it actually increases the max distance he can cover, as well as making it easier to crash onto survivors. Bloody Queen, also known as Mary, is an interesting character in terms of her lore. Her background is both unclear and incomplete. She is believed to essentially be the Marie Antoinette of France. She, along with the king, were overthrown during a rebellion, and she was beheaded. However, she is also connected with Bloody Mary, which is a ghost believed to appear in mirrors. Bloody Queen can summon an aqua mirror near her that will reflect her real body's position proportionally on the other side of the mirror. This mirror image copies her actions exactly, including basic attacks. The mirror image also ignores all collisions, meaning it can walk through walls, float, and even hit survivors through walls. Before the duration of the mirror ends, Bloody Queen can choose to swap positions with her mirrored form. At first presence, Bloody Queen gains the option to rotate her mirror. It will then automatically attempt to face the nearest survivor, making it easier for her to hit them with the mirror image. At full presence, when Bloody Queen summons her mirror next to a survivor, the mirror will generate a proportional copy of the survivor just like it does for Bloody Queen's body. This allows for her to chase and hit the survivor's image, knowing that Bloody Queen's mirror image will as a result then hit the real survivor's body. As long as Bloody Queen places her mirror precisely, she can always make the summoned mirror image appear right next to the survivor. Then, because her mirror image ignores collisions, Bloody Queen can directly hit the survivor. This makes her mirrors one of the most unavoidable abilities in the game, even against strong kiters and rescuers. Additionally, by swapping to the mirror image, she can travel a considerable distance due to the long range of her mirror. Because she can almost use the mirror image like another hunter, she can simultaneously harass a survivor trying to decode while also guarding a survivor on a rocket chair. Fun fact, while Bloody Queen's mirror is highlighted and visible to all survivors around the map, her mirror image cannot be seen through walls. This means, by using a few tricks like rotating the mirror, passing through a wall, or falling down from high ground, she can essentially appear without warning by a decoding survivor for a potential terror shock.